Hello there and welcome to Lagos Transportation Agenda. This is a show in which we showcase the activities and programs of the Lagos State Government and other critical stakeholders as far as transportation is concerned. My name is Austin Ian. One of the critical mandates of the Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, better known as LAMATA, in its bid to provide a world-class integrated transport system that meets the needs of stakeholders and drives the economy of Lagos. To discuss the journey so far in LAMATA's mandate in actualizing the aims and objectives of the master plan, I have with me in the studio the Managing Director and CEO of LAMATA in the person of Engineer Abimbola Akinajo. Welcome to the show, madam. It's a privilege to have you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Right. When the Lagos Transportation Agenda returns after this time out, we will be discussing the journey so far, as I've said.
So with regard to operations of the Blue Line in particular, we all know that we have publicized that the Blue Line is going to be an electrified rail system, and with the third rail system. What that means is that the electrification will be along the track. And for us, that means that it has no tolerance. If you want to cross from one side to the other, you must use the overhead bridges. This is a necessity for all of us to understand. We have, as a government, been very responsible, and we have fenced all along the alignment for the Blue Line to ensure that people do not cross it. But what we see time and time again is that people go there and they cut the fences and they run across. This is fine until we electrify. And we need to understand that this is not acceptable. Not because LAMATA is saying don't do it, but because it is a matter of life and death. It is a health and safety issue. Anywhere in the world, this is the way it functions. And if we want to develop, we need to begin to understand that this is the way we're headed for a sustainable rail system that is good for emissions. Electrified rail is the way forward. And when your rail is electrified, then we must not interface with it. So we ask this, and we ask that the people be responsible and understand that it is mandatory that nobody crosses the tracks. We've bothered to put pedestrian crossings, there's access for the physically challenged, and therefore we have no reason to cross the track. So we just ask that the people please respect this and respect the rails, because if we don't, we will find ourselves in very, very dire straits indeed.
LAMATA, keeping Lagos moving.
Welcome back on the Lagos Transportation Agenda. And as I said in my intro, Engineer Abimbola Akinajo, the Managing Director and CEO of LAMATA, is in the studio with me. Let me start by asking, what was the problem, what were the issues that necessitated the creation and establishment of LAMATA about 2 decades ago or so now?
Okay, so Lagos, as at the time, did not have a strategic transport master plan. That was a given. Also, the transportation space was largely unregulated.
Yes.
In addition, there were no choices, no modal choices. Lagos is blessed. We have water, yes. We have the roads, and we realized, or the state realized, that Lagos utilized only one mode majorly of transportation, which is the road, and they only utilized the buses.
Yes.
And not even high capacity buses, but majorly the small buses. Yes. So therefore you are speaking to modal choices, you are speaking to unregulation, and also another issue that they had was a lack of connectivity.
Yes.
So even where you had options, the connectivity wasn't great. So all of those things spoke to a disjointed transportation system, and that's one of the major reasons that necessitated the starting point for LAMATA.
All right, and then what was the attitude, the reaction of governments, successive governments from that time to date as to the journey that has taken place since the last 2 decades since LAMATA was set up?
So one of the major things I would say that LAMATA has done is to take hold of the planning for transportation. And so therefore, I guess that's what birthed the Lagos State Strategic Transport Master Plan.
Yes.
If you don't plan, you cannot achieve anything. So therefore, that in itself is a great achievement in order to understand where we want to go.
Yes.
So the document is there, the plan is there, and that plan is regularly updated to take cognizance of how developments have happened and what the current situation is, and then project into the future. So the master plan was done. Beyond that, there is being implementation of a major portion of that Strategic Transport Master Plan. So the BRT routes were birthed,
yes,
which spoke to dedicated bus lanes, and that has been very successful in Lagos. Yes. In addition, there's so many other ways that we are now looking at transportation. The waterways is being highly developed, and a number of routes are being developed to ensure that we fully utilize the waterways. Part of what we've done is to ensure connectivity. I spoke to connectivity earlier as something that was not great.
Yes.
So in that sense, now we ensure that whilst we have modal choices, we ensure that there's connectivity between those modal choices. Rail lines were identified as part of the Strategic Transport Master Plan, and 2 of them are being implemented, and they will be operational by the first quarter of next year. So Lagos is moving as per the plan,
yes,
and they're continuing to do so.
Yeah.
So there is connectivity now in the sense that the train stations are robustly connected with the bus stations, as well as the water, the ferry terminals. So in that sense, it is going to become a lot easier for you to use public transport from one end to the other. And within the bus system, there has been a hierarchy of buses. The bus reform initiative was also implemented, and this ensured that we have a hierarchy of buses starting from the dedicated bus lanes on the BRT to standard routes buses that move around in regular traffic, and then down to the small buses, which are the first and last mile buses that ensure that you have connectivity between these modes. So there's a lot that's being rolled out to address the transportation issue. And just to speak to the regulated or the unregulated portion that we have, one of the things LAMATA will be embarking on by the end of this year, beginning of next year, is a study to look at how we will collaborate with the existing informal markets or informal transport systems to move into a more formal and regulated system. And that study will ensure that all stakeholders are put, on the table. And then
by the franchising?
Well, not really. That's part of it. Okay. So what will happen is we will understand what they're doing now, and we know what we want in terms of regulation, and then we will develop a roadmap to regulation, and that will be a document that everybody will sign up into. Just like we've done the master plan, we're now going to do this, and then we will begin to roll out the plan for regulation.
You talk about the regular review of the how often, how regularly is the master plan reviewed?
So the master plan right now is up to 2032.
Okay.
So the review will start. There's been a consultant. We're currently recruiting a consultant to work with us to update the master plan, and it will be updated to 2040. Okay. So you do it, I think, every 8-10 years. That's when we look at it, and so it is now due.
Since it came into being, it has been reviewed.
It has been. This will be the 3rd review.
Okay, so of course you've identified certain things that come up that perhaps were not particularly foreseen between the time of the first implementation and its review.
Yes.
What would be those things now?
So first of all, you have to take cognizance of the growth of Lagos.
Yes.
So you realize now that your areas of influence is not just what we see as Lagos. So part of the master plan will speak to us extending some of our rail lines into the border towns of Ogun State, because we are the metropolitan areas of Lagos. More development has come on the waterways, and that is now being taken cognizance of. The bus reform initiative was something that came as part of development of the master plan. So there's so many things that you look at, and a big portion of that is demography of Lagos, population growth, and you need to be able to take cognizance of that and deal with it.
Well said. When we come back after this time out on the Lagos transportation agenda, we will take a forward look at what to expect as this master plan is being reviewed and implemented to the very letter by LAMATA and other relevant stakeholders. Stay with us. Be right back.
Great economies are built on good transportation network. This is why Lagos State Government through LAMATA has been working tirelessly to enhance the state's transport infrastructure and implement the Strategic Transport Master Plan (STMP) for Lagos and create a world-class transport network for the metropolis. The STMP would deliver 6 rail lines, 1 monorail, 14 BRT routes, 26 water transport routes, 3 cable car routes, and several road interventions to promote the integration of the transport modes. When all these projects are completed, there will be lower emission, leading to better health for all, lower road crashes, better quality of life, and faster economic growth. With the BRT already running in some corridors, jetties being upgraded, and rail line from Okokomaiko to CMS coming on board soon. Life of Lagosians in the face of Lagos is changing every day. A healthier and more prosperous Lagos is in the making, and LAMATA is driving it. LAMATA, keeping Lagos moving.
Just joining, it's the Lagos Transportation Agenda, and my guest today is the Managing Director, CEO of the Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, LAMATA, in the person of Engineer Abimbola Akinajo. Madam, as I said, it's a very forward-looking plan, right? So from your vantage point as MD right now, what new infrastructure or furniture, say, do you envisage that will be included when the review comes up next time, from the time you've been here and the challenges you've seen and the opportunities you've witnessed?
Okay, so like I said, you begin to take cognizance of areas that probably were not opened up before historically, and you have to now take those areas and look at the way population is growing, how that the city is growing in, and what is projected to happen. Exactly. And those things will begin to, you will have to accommodate for that within the master plan. So for instance, you have, right now we have existing 7 rail lines, and I don't see that changing any in its entirety. Okay. So the size of the 7 rail lines, because we haven't even implemented all of that, what we may begin to see is more connectivity between the rail, the road, and the water transportation. Those sorts of smaller detail will be included within the new master plan to come. There will be one of the things that we will also look at is how to deal with freight transportation within Lagos. Exactly. So maybe we start to think about where you have freight, the way your freight will move, so as you will not cause a problem for transportation within Lagos. And also intercity transportation. So right now the whole of Lagos is clogged because all intercity buses come smack into the center of town. Exactly. Maybe we will begin to look at how to ensure that maybe they stay, there's being an intercity terminal sort of study that LAMATA has undertaken. All of that will be taken within the strategic master plan to speak to it as to how that relates with public transport that is intracity. So there will be, we're hoping that we'll get more of a handshake, more of a relationship between intercity and intracity as it affects Lagos transportation.
All right, just before I go on to it just occurred to me that yesterday also the United Nations talked about the world population hitting 8 billion.
Yeah.
we are in one of the most populated cities on the planet right now. Do you see this exploding population as a threat or an opportunity on the basis of transportation, the use of transportation in Lagos?
I think any which way you look at it, you have both. There's a threat and there's the opportunity. The only thing from our perspective is that we must be ready to cater for it. So from a transportation perspective, we need to become aggressive in the implementation of our rail lines, because railway is one thing that will ensure that we do mass movement.
Yes.
So like I said, within the transport master plan, we have 6 rail lines.
Yes.
And those rail lines must be developed and developed aggressively. So we're doing the 2 now. The remaining 4 have been put out to feasibility study. We are doing feasibility study for them, and we have actually done an expression of interest request. So the vision of the state is that LAMATA would not only complete these 2 and begin to operate them, and we will go on to the next 2 and the next 2. So there has to be an aggressive attitude toward developing our rail lines, because if we are going to explode in population, the only thing that can cater to it from a transport perspective is to have excellent rail connectivity with all the other forms of transportation that we have, ensuring that our railway works, but also developing our waterways. And I believe the state is doing that, utilizing our waterways more efficiently and functionally, so that we can have as many people being moved in as few what's the word I'm looking for? Right now we're doing it with 150,000 downfalls or whatever. Yes. We don't want to be doing that. Exactly. First of all, it will not be adequate. Second of all, it's causing congestion. Yes. And beyond that, we need to also begin to look at cleaner energy.
Exactly.
Cleaner energy is a necessity when you're talking about mass movement. So when you look at the blue line, for instance, we're going to do that with electricity. The red line will start off with diesel, but we will look to electrifying. Those things become a necessity when you have so many people in such a small confined space. Exactly. Cleaner energy will become the buzzword that we must strive to achieve.
And Nigeria is particularly blessed in the issue of gas.
Gas,
and so that's something that you want to factor into your use.
Yeah, and I agree with you. So if you look at buses, for instance, we've started to look at CNG buses. In fact, we have deployed a pilot case on the Lekki-Epe corridor. We have about 10 buses running on CNG. We've done a number of pilots. We have collected data to the point now that in the next procurement of buses that we're looking at, the high capacity buses, they will be CNG buses. And for us, we want to be a mixed energy use public transport system. So we will have CNG buses, obviously graduating toward the electric vehicles. Yeah.
What about technologies, forward-looking, cutting-edge technologies? Like, for example, there's been some buzz, I don't know if it's official, but there's been a buzz about cable cars and such use.
In all fairness, we have 2, I think, or so cable cars within our master plan. And those ones we have been pursuing for a while, and it's still on the front burner. So there's a private sector company that's working with LAMATA, and the vision is that sooner rather than later we will begin to see them come and be able to put some implementation into place. But the strategic master plan speaks to that, and that is how forward thinking our plan is.
How about the terminals and the shelters, and is there any plan to either increase them during the review that is going to come up in a few years' time, or just leave them the way they are?
No, so for us, if you see that we're currently building new bus terminals, we're changing the face of our bus terminals and to make them more modern, more comfortable for the passengers, more efficient in picking up and dropping off passengers. Beyond that, we're also lifting the faces of our bus stops. But above all, we are looking to deploy an ITS system, intelligent transport system, that will allow us to be able to have a robust and connected timetabling system between various modes. So I will be able to synergize the timetable for my buses with the timetabling for the ferry system and also the timetabling for the rail. And our bus systems, the vision that we have is that we will have public systems within ITS systems that will tell you when the next bus is coming and all of that.
Yes.
At all of our bus stops. We will have it at the ferry terminals, we will have it, obviously the train stations will have it,
exactly.
So that as a passenger you'll be able to see when your trains or your buses are coming and you'll be able to work with it. Beyond that, we will be able to deploy, we will soon be able to deploy a system that will allow you to plan your journey.
Yes.
So you can put it in there. Once we have synergized all of our timetablings and schedules, so if you put, I want to go from Alakbere to Victoria Island, for instance, it can tell you, you can take the ferry from here to there, take a bus from here to there, and the train, so you can plan your journey knowing fully well that all of those timetables are completely synchronized together to give you an efficient way in which you can travel from one point to the other using complete, from point A to point B, public transport system. So all of those things are part of what we have in the plan to deploy for transportation in Lagos.
All right, let me just round up this discussion, Madam MD, by asking about the role of the private sector in all this. Just give a review. I know there's some role they play. Can you just give a review so we get a good picture of what the private sector is doing with the state government in ensuring that all this works seamlessly?
Okay, I mean, from every mode, there's business for public transport, for the private sector. So first of all, we're building the railway. The state is providing infrastructure. We're going to work with private sector to operate and to bring in rolling stock and all of that. So we had put out concession agreement requests for the blue line, and we got private sector, and they're working with us as we speak. The same thing for the red line. So both of those will have private sector involvement. With the buses, we're doing the same. We're working with a number of our operators to ask them to bring rolling stock. We will continue to build BRT lines. We will continue to build bus terminals. We will continue to build bus stops. We will continue to deploy technology, a unified payment system, ITS system, to ensure that transportation systems become easy. But we will work with the public sector, or the private sector, sorry, to ensure that they bring rolling stock. And that we have a number of people who are working with us as we speak. So there's a lot that private sector will do with us, and we will continue to put things like that. They work with us sometimes in the implementation of infrastructure. So there's a lot to do, and we continuously put out opportunities for private sector to work with us.
That's very encouraging to you. Thank you so much for your time, Madam MD.
Thank you very much, sir.
I know how busy you are, and that you've always been available for us on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
And that's the size of the show today. Join me next time on this show, the Lagos Transportation Agenda, for yet another insightful discourse on transportation in Lagos State and beyond. My name is Austin Inyan, saying have a nice day, take care of yourself, God bless, bye-bye.